Welcome, everyone. My name is David Talby, and with me today is Maria Baranchikova, who is our AI governance lead. And our goal is to help you with a very simple offering to stay current and stay compliant with a network of laws and regulations that are required when you are either developing or deploying AI systems. We're going to talk a bit about the current legal landscape for AI use. Then we're going to talk about the policy suite that we have developed that enables you to conform and make sure you operate legally within that entire legal landscape. And we'll finish by telling you how to get it and how to get started. AI legislation in the US is a booming industry. This is a map generated by Multistate AI that shows that in 2024 alone, we got 99 new bills that were enacted into law, meaning they are currently the law of the land in 45 different states. In 2025, the year just began, and we already have 836 bills that were submitted in almost every state in the US. So what's happening is that while in places like Europe, we have the EU AI Act, in the US, it's basically every state to its own, and states vary very much about what they require. But many of them are doing similar things like privacy law, deepfake laws, AI transparency and disclosure laws. Some of them are going further to require more in terms of bias, human rights, transparency requirements, fair business practices from AI laws. But the problem that you have is that if you want to operate across the USA, you are required by law to have, to read, to understand, and to comply with all of these. In addition to laws that are being created state by states, there are also quite a few US national or federal laws that apply when you build AI systems, and they are not new, right? So the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 has some things that you're not allowed to do in terms of bias, in terms of how you treat people. There are laws with respect to employment, right? So you're not allowed to discriminate by age, by race, by gender, by past military history, by pregnancy status. There are a lot of protections for Americans with disabilities, okay, which means that if you are rejecting a potential employee, a potential renter, a potential credit application, you're treating someone differently in terms of criminal law because they have diagnosed depression, alcoholism, any other medical issues, you're going to get in trouble. And the general principle is exactly as it says here. If it's illegal to do it with a computer or with AI as well. And there are thousands of lawsuits that have been filed, have been settled, are coming in because companies are being sued, mostly based on existing laws that have already been on the books. So if you're not doing anything, you are under risk. You're under legal risk, liability risk, and of course, even just financial and reputation risk, right? Even if you settle. So you can see an example of things that have already happened. If ChatGPT, for example, makes up that you have a criminal history, then you have a libel case of your end, and there are libel cases that have been filed and have been argued nowadays. If you reject credit applications automatically, and someone can show that, if I resubmit the application, but now I say that I'm white instead of black, and you give me a different result, then you're in violation of the Fair Housing Act. If you automatically reject job applications, or if I can submit my resume 3 times with 3 different countries of origins or 3 different ages and birthdays for myself, and see that I got different responses for those 3, you're probably in violation of anything from the Civil Rights Act to age discrimination acts. They've also been lawsuits requiring things like AI transparency with freedom of information. Okay, so basically, look, if you've made a decision about for example, why someone should get bail while someone else should not, and what the algorithm is. By Freedom of Information Act, in some states, you're allowed to ask for the policy. How is this happening, and how this consistently happening? And that's been debated as well. And you can see here, there's, of course, copyright infringement lawsuits, privacy lawsuits, wrongful arrest lawsuits, and there's a lot that's happening in this space that you need to be aware of. You carry legal risks whether you are building AI systems or you're using them. Okay, so for example, if you are developing a product, an AI service that uses some machine learning, LLM, deep learning, doesn't matter, and for example screens resumes, or even just does the ranking, okay, to show recruiters who they should look at in which order, right, when based on a match or job description. First of all, as the company who developed the system, you cannot say, oh, a big corporation bought the system, they're the ones actually getting the resumes, and they're the ones actually screening, they're at fault. You cannot, people have tried that, judges have called bullshit on it, and said, no, you developed the ranking algorithm, it's your system, you can be sued as well as the company providing you the service. On the other hand, if you're the company using the service, you're also at risk. So you cannot say, oh, I'm using this SaaS service, all those resumes were sent to this other company that I'm buying the service for, and they did the ranking, I'm out of the picture. You cannot do that as well. And in general, if you're building a system, it's your responsibility to show that the system is safe, is reliable, does not lie or cheat, use unfair business practices. You have some transparency requirements. You have some, of course, privacy requirements very often. If you're using an AI system, you cannot say, look, I believe the vendor. They said they tested it, like it's all good. They put it into production. For example, if you're a hospital, you are required by law to treat patients without bias, right, and in a safe and reliable manner. If you're a bank, there are many regulations on what you're legally allowed to do in terms of offering credit equally to different people and being transparent about it. Even if you're just a commerce or an e-commerce person, if it can be shown that you price things differently, you offer discounts differently to people based on their race, for example, or country of origin, or immigration status, you're probably violating some civil rights laws that are here as well. On top of that, specific states, and most notably Virginia and Colorado, have passed a fairly extensive legislation that specifically have legal requirements on developers and on deployers of high-risk AI systems. And it's basically what you'd expect. It means that if you develop the system, you're required to show, to test, to prove, and be transparent about the proof of how well your system acts. And if you are buying a system, it is your legal responsibility to make sure that you test it, you evaluate it, you test it kind of within the deployment environment, and you monitor it on a regular basis. So, as mentioned, there are national laws, there are state and local laws, and there's basically case law, right, which is what courts establish, right, as kind of the precedents and recommended practice, but that's not all. In the US, there's also quite a few regulatory guidelines that apply. And in the US, if you are a regulator, so within the executive branch, you provide guidelines, and what it means is that you interpret the law. Okay, so for example, if there's a law that says that before you launch a medical device, right, you're required to show that the device is actually safe and effective, then the FDA would publish a 100-page document that says, oh, well, here's how we interpret this law. Here's what it means, right? To test it, right, you have to do all of these 135 things, and those guidance are basically law, right? And since you are legally required to follow them, they are enforceable. And in the US, there's been a lot of regulatory rules and work specifically related to AI. So Consumer Protection Bureau has guidance on black box using black box credit models, right, and the right of consumers to basically get an explanation, understand what happened. There's guidance from the FTC around the deceptive business practices, missing claims, hiding the fact that someone is working with an AI, and use of disclaimers, right? Overuse of disclaimers basically will not be allowed, will not stand up in court. The US Trademarks Office issued guidance about what you are allowed to register as an AI. Health and Human Services, that was interesting. There was a final rule last year that basically calls for both some transparency in how you make any automated decision most automated decisions in healthcare, and also basically makes it illegal to build and operate biased AI medical decision systems with a fairly broad scope of what applies. So when a US regulator says that they have a guidance or a guideline, it's not advisory, it's the absolute law. When they say they have the draft guidance, it means that it's not the law yet, but the moment the draft is finalized, it becomes law. So if, for example, you're preparing to submit for a medical device next year, you'd better prepare the documentation and your processes is in line with the draft guidance, because the moment, the day that guidance becomes a final rule, you need to have all the documentation and the proof that you run all of that process already. On top of legislation, state and local, on top of regulatory rules and guidelines and case law, there are other things that you need to consider and you need to be aware of when you are kind of building your AI policies and your AI controls, just to make sure that you operate legally. And those are industry standards. Probably the most famous and widely used one is the NIST AI RMF, AI Risk Management Framework, which has there's a general framework, and then there's also a profile specific to generative AI that has basically other requirements and other controls specific to generative AI systems. We found at least 4 ISO standards that are relevant in some way to how you build, how you manage risk, and how you operate and manage AI systems. And there is also, of course, privacy and cyber security networks. And you can look at these as advisory companies. Look, yes, you can decide to go and be ISO 42001 certified. You can decide not to. But what happens over time is that those advisory standards are embedded into law, and that happens in 2 ways. First of all, sometimes they're actually written into law. So, for example, the NIST privacy framework, which is 10 years old at this point, is so well established that the state of Tennessee passed a law that basically requires every company operating in a state to have a written set of policies that conform to the NIST privacy framework. And that happens quite often. You have this standard. After 5 to 10 years, people seem to adopt it. People seem to say it's good. And then some states or some courts come and says, look, basically, if you claim to have a privacy program, right, or in the state of Tennessee, just required for every company, you need to have a written policy that conforms to all of these requirements. The other thing that happens often is that these standards basically become the legal standard on what is a commercially acceptable defense. Okay, so for example, as you can see on the right now, 3 states, Ohio, Connecticut, and Utah, established legally as a law that they passed that if you have written policies that show that you follow the NIST cybersecurity framework, then you can use that as a defense against civil tort if you have a breach. Okay, so just like, for example, right, if someone burglars your house, right, you can go to the insurance company and come and says, look, I've had a look, right, the windows were locked, I have an alarm system, I have smoke detectors, I did everything that's reasonable, please pay me for the insurance, right? What they did is kind of say, look, if you followed everything within the NIST cybersecurity framework, yes, you've done everything that's commercially reasonable to protect yourself against a breach. Of course, a breach could still happen, right? But you cannot be claimed to be negligent. Okay, and that's what often happens. In 2024, we had the first lawsuit in the US that actually quoted the NIST AI risk management framework. Basically, it's still been litigated, but was the first lawsuit that claimed that the company was negligent because they did not apply the NIST AI risk management framework controls, okay, which should legally mean that they've been negligent, right, in terms of allowing basically bad things to happen with their AI systems. So the main reason for companies to adopt these standards is really so that if and when bad things happen, they have that claim, right, that they've done everything that's kind of commercially reasonable and expected to stay protected. In specific industries, you also have other guidelines and other guidance that are being offered. We do a lot of work in healthcare and life science. Specifically in healthcare, probably in the US, the leading organizations to offer guidance and policies is CHAI, the Coalition for Health AI, and the framework, the assurance guidance from the Coalition for Health AI is one of the set of guidelines we have embedded into the policies that you'll see here today. But we also found 12 others, and which have been built by other coalitions and described in the literature, and in some cases are still being worked on. There's a lot of duplication across all those frameworks. So all of them talk about safety, and they talk about hallucination, they talk about cybersecurity, and they talk about bias, and they talk about privacy and consent. But we have gone through all of them, and seeing so that when they don't match, or when they offer kind of something that's more specific, we can really take the union, take the kind of the best of both worlds, so that if you, for example, if you do work within healthcare and you adopt these policies that we'll show you, then you can claim conformance really to all of these guidelines together. And a lot of the work we've done was exactly that. We have read all of the laws, we have gone through all of the industry standards, we have gone through some case laws, and we have read a lot of just academic papers and policy papers from different industries, and as you can see, a lot in healthcare, and to understand what are the guidelines, basically what are the expectations of what is expected, right, at this point in time. And of course, those things move. And what we'd like to give you today is a way to address all of these very complex legal landscape that you have to comply with the policy suite that does exactly what it says here. So it gives you a set of policies, which means here are things you have to do as a company, right? So just like you have, for example, a privacy policy or cybersecurity policies, or employee policies, you're going to now have a set of AI policies. First of all, they would adopting this means that you actually have written policies, right? Which, as you have seen, is the key in quite a few legal cases. To come and say, yes, we have policies to comply with all of these requirements, all of these laws, all of these constraints. But more importantly, is the fact that when you not just take the policies, but actually implement them, you are in fact going to be you are going to conform to all of these laws. So and it's not just that you'll do a lot of good things and a lot of best practices that are expected. You'll know that you are allowed to operate anywhere in the USA in a legal way and in a legally safe way. The second thing we do is we do update this policy quarter. So one substantial overhead that you probably need, that you probably have to comply with, is actually staying in touch with all of those 836 bills that are being debated, right, and may or may not be passed into laws. Understanding new drafts that come out of regulators, new drafts and versions that come out of organizations like NIST or ISO or others. Reading them and updating your policies. So we have a process where, yes, we track the legislation on a daily basis. We track everything that's happening. We read through them, and every quarter we give you a new version of the policies to make sure that you stay compliant over time. And we'll do all of that for free. So really, we just like to give you these policies today to help the community right accelerate and operate in a just be able to operate legally. With that, what I'd like to do now is hand off the presentation to Maria, who will tell you more about really what this policy suite actually is, what's included in it, and how you can use it. Maria, to you.
David, thank you very much. Your presentation is always interesting and you share your expertise. So it's always good to hear you. So as you mentioned, we provide a set of AI policies, which comprises AI risk management policy, AI safety policy, AI fairness policy, AI system lifecycle policy, AI privacy policy, AI transparency policy. This is the current set which we provide. So now I will just give you some introduction to each of this policy. So our goal is mostly that you can use these policies if you are in the US, and as well as EU. So similar to GDPR, we expect that EU AI acts will also impact on companies that have, for example, users or customers from the EU. So that's why you need to comply. But most of all, I mean, these policies are for US. The target is the US. And when we monitor the policies, we divide all the legislation on US state and local laws, on US state and local legislation in different areas such as privacy law, deepfake laws, regulatory rules, and also, as David mentioned, we also monitor frameworks and standards of associations such as CHAI, Future AI, Quest, Claim, etc. So let's go to the next slide. So we provide these policies for free, as we mentioned, and of course, for the needs of your organization, you may adapt, you may change everything in the context, except for logos, which I will mention a little bit later. You are free to share. You're free to share to the customers, to investors, partners, so that you can show that you are AI responsible and follow ethical standards. However, the documents contain logos, watermarks of specific AI, so that you cannot change these logos or watermarks, and you cannot change the specific AI logo itself. Of course, you cannot use it for commercial use. You can use it for your internal purposes. You cannot sell, resell, or publish these policies. You cannot embed in a product or service. So, as mentioned, you can share alike without restrictions. So if you adapt or build upon the material, you must distribute your contributions under the same license, so that you cannot change this license. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, David. So I'm going to speak now about each policy, and the first one is AI risk management policy, which opens the whole suite. So in this policy, you can use it to specify how you identify, manage, avoid, and report risks of AI systems, such as threats to human safety, dignity, or liberties. And in this policy, you can identify AI governance officer and key responsibilities, of course. Regarding risk management process, you can identify when risk management is done, involvement of team members in cooperating when risk is managed with third parties and or within the team, how risk management is conducted. And you can use this policy to describe risk evaluation process that includes frequency, assurance criteria, deployment approval policies, go and no-go checkpoints, and of course it identifies risk levels. Then we have section related to risk mitigation schedule, so that you can describe your regular scheduled risk mitigation events or those that you need to have on a case-by-case basis on ad hoc event. Then we have a vendor management section, which applies both to systems built in-house as well as systems or components procured from third parties for third-party vendors. And next one is training for AI literacy. So it describes how your team is trained for AI literacy, and then it's reporting. So time of reporting, its frequency, and term of record keeping. So let's go to the next policy. I think it's system lifecycle policy. So AI has, of course, its life cycle, and so the process of risk management is actually a long and process. So this policy defines what each team building an AI system and organization must do to manage the system's risks, and when it is required to work with the AI governance office. So the first section defines AI system risk manager. So you can see that it has different responsibilities from AI governance officer. However, their cooperation is also required. The next section is about go or no-go checkpoint. So just looking on the paper notes. And so what are the goals of the checkpoint and risks to be considered? Then the next section is about risk level determination. It considers risk from low to unacceptable risks, and so we define 4 levels of risks from low to unacceptable one. Then we describe pre-deployment checkpoint that you can use to customize. Then system development testing and annual checkpoint that you need to conduct within your organization. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, one of the AI responsible principle is fairness. So that you need to specify that you comply with relevant legislation and industry standards with respect to model bias, stereotypes, discrimination, and representation risks. So the first section in this policy, it discusses bias threat modeling, then mitigation of data bias, mitigation of algorithmic bias, testing the data and algorithmic bias, then manual testing and bias audits, mitigating for unfair outcomes, monitoring in production. So the next one is AI safety policy. It defines how you comply with the relevant legislation and industry standards with respect to model safety, accuracy, security, reliability across the entire lifecycle of AI system. The first section is about safety threat modeling. Then it contains automated testing, manual testing, monitoring, human oversight and override, and incident reporting. So let's go to the next policy. AI privacy policy. So, that it's important to implement privacy by design. And here you define how you apply privacy by design and ensure that your products and services are compliant with relevant consumer privacy laws, data protection laws, whenever you operate, whether you are in the US or in UE or you target EU market, for instance. So take inform specific and revocable consent from the users. Identify training data, which is also important to comply with privacy. Test for privacy, and child privacy is also important. The age is the age definition is important. So, and it's an incident reporting. All these this policy describes all the details of incident, how it is reported, the term of keeping the records, etc. So let's go to the next slide. So AI transparency policy. So the model by legislation definitions as well as industry standards that become commercially acceptable. They require all both developers and deployers to explain and disclose certain aspects, such as use of AI, that you actually use AI in your model, or you need to disclose AI-generated content. You cannot use deepfakes. You need to explain AI decisions to be transparent. And of course, as I said, disclosures are both required for developers and deployers. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So now, David, it's your turn.
I can take that, and thank you, Maria. It's fantastic to have an experienced lawyer such as yourself who specializes in this area, because I'm sure everyone listening can appreciate the thousands and thousands of pages of details and fine print, right, to read and cross-reference and map and understand, so that we can give people, we can give the community one simplified set of policies, right? If you do all of these things in order, right, you're going to be conforming and in compliance, right, with this whole network, right, of legalese, right, that you have to comply with. So thank you.
For several months, we have a high workload studying in addition to what we already know.
Yes, there's a lot of reading of very long and boring documents. Yes, that's involved. Yes. Yes, but to you, everyone who's listening, the really good news is that we've done it all for you. The policies are ready, and you can get them while you are listening to the slide. It's pretty simple. If you go to pacific.ai/governments, there's an online form which I believe has exactly 5 fields, basically your name, email, and company. and we'll email you a PDF of the policies. If you want, you can also email us and ask, and we'll send those to you. So we said those are freely available. Please use them. Please put them to good use. We hope they accelerate you and help you, sleep better at night, knowing that you're doing things the right way and operating legally, right, and doing the right things for your customers, partners, and investors. Once you have the policies, there begins the work. You should read them for starters, especially if the goal is to actually adopt them as organizational policies, and then the hard work is to implement, right? So if you want to be compliant with the law, so the good news is you don't need to go and read and understand, right, and cross-reference all of these laws and standards and regulations, but you do need to implement the policies, right? So we've narrowed it down to the simplest unified set of controls that you need to have, but now you need to actually appoint an AI governance officer. You need to train them. You need to train the rest of your team. You need to have incident reporting tools, right, both for safety as well as for privacy. You need to actually conduct a risk assessment. If you are building systems, AI systems, so if you're a startup, you probably just have one AI system. If you're an airline or a healthcare provider, you probably have dozens of systems. You need to start by actually running risk management, looking at what the issues are, doing the testing, doing the bias mitigation, doing the safety analysis as required by the policies. So that is really where the work is. Once you have the policies implemented, right, and you believe that yes, we've built in these controls, we have the people, we have the tools, we've run the process once. One other thing we'll be happy to provide you for free is really just public recognition. So if you just really email, contact us in any way to let us know, and if you can in writing self-attest that, look, I've taken the policies. Of course, you may change them, adapt them, right, configure them to your organization any way you see fit. But if you come and says, look, I've implemented this, and these are now adopted or in effect in my organization, let us know. We'll be happy. We'll be able to give you a public badge you can put on your website. Says you're level 1 governance that process that is in place, and that's another basically way to project that level of confidence, right, and that work you've done, right, to your customers and the rest of the ecosystem. Pacific AI provides two kinds of paid services on top of that, which is auditing and building. So an audit means that we would come in as with a team, a small team, as an independent third party and conduct an AI audit. Basically, we would come in and we would check point by point that you are in compliance with all the relevant laws and regulation, all the relevant industry standards for your specific industry and whatever it is that you do. We would collect this documentation, and then if and when you pass, right, we would give you a Pacific AI letter of attestation, right, that we have audited, right, we have checked, we have tested, yes, you're operating legally with request, with respect to all of these 70 plus, right, different sources that we cover as of now. And of course, we'd be happy to do also a public website badge, of course, at a much higher level of certification, joint press release. So if you operate in an industry where you are either required or highly encouraged to have an independent third-party AI audit, then that's one of the things we provide. The second thing we can provide is actually to build and implement these processes. Okay, so if you come and says, look, my team is really busy just building the product, I need this, right? Because I'm selling to enterprise customers, they need to see these processes implemented, or I actually have legal risk because my competitors and others are getting sued for those things, but I just don't have the people or the expertise to do it. You can bring us in. We'll help you set up an AI governance process, a center of excellence. We'll bring in the tools, or we'll use some of your own tools, like to do things like testing, monitoring, incident reporting. We'll bring in all the templates. So really, that would be a much faster, lighter way to go and actually implement all these policies and make them happen. So as we said, please start for free, and you have a commitment that we will keep updating these policies. We will make sure that you remain current with all the legislation, all the regulation that's out there. So there will not be any surprises, things you haven't noticed. On all of that is for free. If you're looking for a third-party audit, or if you're looking for someone to actually come and establish this in-house capability for you, then please contact us and we'll be happy to help. So that's overall what we wanted to cover. We hope that you've already completed the form, emailed us, and you have the policies at your disposal. If you'd like to learn more about what we do and what we are building next, you have a few options. First of all, we are also building software tools specifically for testing and monitoring generative AI systems. So there are quite a few tools for testing, of course, just system testing in general, right? Cybersecurity, some privacy tools, and some kind of tools to monitor services in production. There are really very few, if any, tools that we have found that cover the range of testing that is often legally required for generative AI systems. And so we are building one of those. If you are interested to try them, to join the waitlist, to provide feedback, first of all, it's on the Pacific AI website. You can look at them and contact us to see how you can get involved. Secondly, at the upcoming Healthcare NLP Summit on April 1st, 2025, there's going to be a session that is more focused on the healthcare domain, showing the kind of tests and the kind of benchmarks that are being developed specifically for testing generative AI system in the medical space. So these include things like personal data leakage, hallucinations, inaccurate medical reasoning and medical diagnosis, but they also include some things that are very specific to healthcare. So susceptibility to medical errors due to things like anchoring or groupthink, confirmation bias, a deviation from medical consensus, and really quite a few other categories of known errors or either decision-making errors or reasoning errors that are common in healthcare and need to be tested for. The last thing I would call out is there's also a LinkedIn group. So if you go to LinkedIn and you put in the search box, responsible AI group, this would come up, and it's just a free LinkedIn group. But if you're in it, you'll see daily updates about new regulations, new laws, new policy papers, new academic papers, new tools, new open source libraries and benchmarks in this space. So if you are more deeply in this space and would like to kind of stay up to date on a daily basis, this is another interesting resource for you to consider. And with that, I would like to thank you for your time. I really hope that we can provide you this free resource that really will enable you to move faster and do some good with AI. And I wish you the best of luck and success in whatever it is you're building next. Thank you.